We have a
I can't blame any of my mess on the birds or anything. It's
yeah.
me.
Well, it's my own fault. We have a nice collection of coffee cans, plastic coffee cans that Steve's been saving. So now I know what I'm going to do with them. So, well, it's a little after 6:30. So I'm going to turn this over here. And this guy in the middle with the do-rag is Chris Kline, and he is from Butterfly Ridge, which is out. Tell me where again. I'm going to forget.
The Hocking Hills. If you're
Borough,
familiar with the
yeah.
Hocking Hills, we're about halfway between Rock House State Park and Conkle's Hollow.
Okay, and Chris is going to talk tonight about pollinator flowers. But do you want to tell us a little bit about what you're doing out there and your business?
Sure.
And then I'll turn over the screen to you.
Okay.
Or is that part of your talk? Do you want to do that first? What works?
No, actually it's not. So
okay.
So we can tackle that here. My wife and I in 2015 we started tinkering with habitat on our 21 acres. We have 21 acres, 5 of which was ours originally, and then we bought out my brother's 5, and then one day after Mom died, my dad just handed us his 11. So Butterfly Ridge, in a matter of just a month or so, and with no effort on my part except driving Dad to the lawyer's office, we grew from 5 acres to 21 acres. And what we're doing is we are tinkering with the already existing habitat that we have on our site to try to make it more appealing to butterflies and other pollinators.
Great.
And I won't be getting real detailed into the different habitats, but for example, we have a naturally occurring wetland that when we started managing things was largely a big swampy area full of multiflora rose and privet and deer tongue grass, and that was about it. And so we've been steadily digging out the privet, digging out the multiflora rose, tilling up the area, excuse me, and planting things like cup plant and swamp milkweed and swamp aster and cardinal flower, trying to give some things that are going to be more attractive to pollinators than deer tongue grass. And to give you an idea, in August of 2019, we've got 2 bridges that go through the wetland, and the bridges are maybe 100 feet apart from each other. In August of 2019, in that distance between the 2 bridges, we counted close to 80 swallowtail butterflies all hanging out on that cup plant. And so
wow.
that tells me that what we're doing is working. Now, like I said, I'm a butterfly guy, but we're trying to be bee friendly and beetle friendly and friendly to everybody else too. And so as I do my talk, we're going to focus more on the plants, I guess, than the actual Butterfly Ridge and the different habitats that we have out here, that sort of thing. One of the things that we've had to deal with, the site has been in my family since 1863.
Wow.
And which is kind of cool, don't get me wrong, but unfortunately a lot of those past generations, their use of the land was extremely extractive. So corn, alfalfa, watermelons, strawberries, peppers, cows, horses, all that kind of stuff, to the point, like in our prairie area, when we first started working on the prairie, I mean, it was just junk, junk plants, junk soil, junk everything. And we ended up having to take that 1.5 acres. We took it all the way back to bare dirt, and we To date, we have added 5 tons of lime to try to get the soil pH up
Wow.
to approaching normal. Because I mean, it was super, super acidic in there.
Wow.
And then once we got the bare dirt, we completely planted it with the stuff that we wanted. And actually, I will be showing a picture of what that final product has turned out to be.
Right.
Because one of the things I'm hoping to get across to you folks is it's not rocket science. Okay. Yeah, it's persistence, and it's being deliberate, but it's not, it's all a matter of planting the right stuff. That's
Right.
all it is.
Right.
So,
All righty. And you did tell me, I asked him earlier, you do have you have groups that come out. Tell them about, just to, you know, pump your and your business there, and tell people, and then you can tell us
Sure.
what we're really here for.
Sure. Yeah, Butterfly Ridge. Once again, we're in the Hocking Hills. We're about, I think 5 miles from Old Man's Cave. We're about halfway between Rock House and Conkle's Hollow. Our walking trail is just under a mile long. If you do all the different little loops through the different habitats, you'll cover about a mile. We are open every day but Tuesday to the public. Admission fee is $5. You can stay as long as you want. You can stay as short as you want. We have a gift shop, you know, everything butterfly, from sippy cups to books to plush butterfly toys, you know, you name it. The trail goes through a variety of different habitats. Once again, that were already pre-existing, but we've kind of tinkered with them to hopefully make them more attractive to pollinators. You can come on your own, walk the trail. We have a self-guided tour book that you can get that will teach you some stuff as you go around, or you can join one of our guided tours that we offer at 1 o'clock and 3 o'clock every afternoon. And if I didn't mention, we're open every day but Tuesday. I don't remember if I mentioned that or not. We have bird walks every Sunday morning at 9 in the morning. June through August on Saturday nights, we do moth lighting, where we have stations set up where we hang sheets and put high-powered lights next to the sheets to pull moths in so that folks can kind of take a look at. I'll be honest, I'm very partial to moths. I mean, butterflies are cool, but I'm very partial to moths. And to give you an idea, our current moth list is quickly approaching 770 species that we've documented here.
Wow.
So, and I mean, we've got some super colorful moths. I mean, we've got some of the best moths in the country here in Southeast Ohio. So,
how about bees? Yeah. You got any bee trees?
Bee trees. Well,
yeah. Old trees with bees in them.
And you know, I mean, I see honeybees and nobody around me has
hives. Bet you do.
So they got to be somewhere. Now,
yeah,
we attempted to construct a demonstration hive at our place, and the honeybees never came. And we had a beekeeper, and in fact, that beekeeper might be among this list of people I'm seeing. I don't know. But a beekeeper came and told us why there weren't any honeybees in our demonstration hive, because basically we put it in the wrong place. You know, much that as anything. But what we're trying to move towards, you know, in addition to butterflies and moths, are the native bees. So mason bees, leafcutter bees, miner bees, that sort of thing. And something that you'll see in the slideshow here for too long, we partnered with an Eagle Scout, a young lady that was working on her Eagle Scout project, and she wanted to help our native solitary bees. And so she put up bee boxes around Butterfly Ridge. And I'll be honest, when I first heard about bee boxes, and this was years ago, I was apprehensive because I have a fair amount of experience with bat and butterfly boxes. And when people asked me about, whether I thought they should get bat and butterfly boxes, I told them, if you have $20 burning a hole in your pocket, spend it on milkweed and not a butterfly box. So
Yeah.
I was a little apprehensive with the bee box thing, but then we actually got a gift certificate to a nursery over by Dayton. And when we got over there, and I'll warn you ahead of time right now that we are pretty hardcore native plant nerds. I promise you that you will never find petunias at Butterfly Ridge. And well, this nursery that we got the gift certificate to, I mean, they didn't have really much
Native.
in the way of native stuff. So we thought, well, here's a bee box, a bee house. We'll get a bee house and see what happens, and spend our gift certificate on that. And lo and behold, the bees came. And I mean, it was kind of fun watching them going in and out and, doing their thing. So when this Eagle Scout young lady approached us with her idea, we're like, yeah, sure, let's do it, because we've seen them actually work. So we're hoping they'll work again. So.
That's cool. One of our members, I don't think he's here yet tonight, Nightcrawler Gardens, and he raises natives. So we have a source for everybody that gets ideas of what they want to plant this year. Well, are you ready for me to turn over the screen to you?
With the Lancaster Bee Club.
Oh, sure.
All righty, let me find your name on the list here and see if I can figure out how to do this. Oh, come on. There's Chris, and it says, make you a host.
Okay. And I'm going to press the little share screen thing here.
And we see black. We don't see anything on you. There we go. Got it.
Okay.
Great.
See a couple books there.
And I may mute it. I'm going to mute everybody, and we can ask questions at the end, because we're getting noise from the background here. Let me see if I can do this.
This is the guy who's doing the pollinator.
Can't figure out how to mute everybody. Well, oh, maybe it's here. Well, I'm going to just ask everybody to mute. If everybody mute yourself until he's done, then we won't have background noise going on. And
I got to tell you, the other day, you were
somebody needs to mute. Well,
right. I was laughing.
Let me see if I can do it. Well, okay. That seems to have solved the problem. Thank you, whoever did that. So you're on. Go, Chris, go for it.
All righty. So, yeah, welcoming butterflies and other pollinators to your garden. Once again, I'm largely a butterfly and moth guy, but we're in the process of learning more about other pollinators. We had a young lady, she's graduated college. To me, anybody who's younger than me is a young lady. But Melissa, I think, is probably close to 30 years old. But she came out and did a kind of a rough tentative native bee survey at our place last summer. And we're really wanting to pursue that stuff even more. So hopefully there'll be a little bit for everybody as we go through here. Now, I don't like to make assumptions. And so just a real quick and dirty lesson, what pollination is. I'm assuming most of the audience already knows this, but once again, just in case. So what pollination is when an insect, in this case a bee, but an insect, a butterfly, a beetle, something or other, transfers pollen from one flower, in this case the big flower, and they fly over here to a smaller flower, and then totally by accident, it's not intentional, but they transfer that pollen to the pistil of the other flower. Okay, technically that is what pollination is. Once again, they're not doing it intentionally. They're
Right.
just, trying to meet their own needs for food and all this other stuff just kind of gets in the way while they're doing that. Now, wind also pollinates. It's just not critters that can pollinate. And in fact, the picture here with the pine pumping all that wonderful yellow pollen into the air, that's a picture that we're going to be seeing here in Southern Ohio probably within the next couple weeks, I suspect. So yeah, what happens, the wind picks up this huge quantity of pollen, blows it around with the hope that it will land on the female structure on a female cone somewhere, and in the case of pine trees. So with wind pollination, it's very much an accidental type of a pollination, whereas with insects, we'll say it's unintentional pollination rather than accidental. Corn, wheat, other grains, grasses, they typically use the wind pollination as well. How do you know if something is wind pollinated or animal pollinated? Wind pollinated plants tend to have very small green flowers. They tend to not have any petals at all, or the petals, the normal pretty part of the flower, the petals might be greatly reduced. So either absent or nearly absent. Wind pollinated plants tend to produce massive amounts of pollen, like we just saw in that picture with the pine trees. Most wind pollinated plants are either trees or grasses. And many of them, speaking specifically about the trees, many of them bloom before they leaf out. Okay, so and the reason for that is fairly simple. If you're trying to spread pollen all over the place and there's leaves out, then the leaves are going to get in the way. You're going to end up putting all your pollen on leaves instead of putting them on female flowers. So it's helpful to take care of this stuff before the leaves come out to get in the way. Now, normally animal pollinated plants will have large colorful flowers with large petals, or sometimes if the petals are missing, then what are called the sepals will look like petals. They do not produce anywhere near the amount of pollen that the wind pollinated plants do. Most of them are either shrubs or forbs, wildflowers, that sort of thing. And then the animal pollinated plants tend to bloom throughout the season, okay? Because once again, for them, leaves on the plants is not necessarily a problem, okay? Like it is for the wind pollinated plants. So who pollinates? Wide variety of creatures, as you folks are well aware, bees and wasps, okay, they're pollinators. Flies are pollinators. Beetles are pollinators. Butterflies and moths are pollinators. Hummingbirds are pollinators. Even bats and other mammals can be pollinators. So there's lots of different critters that take their turns at providing pollination services. So the bees and wasps, and you folks might actually, this 100 flowers per day thing, that was the result of some research I did. You folks may actually have a better feel for that number.
Many
My
more.
experience with what I've researched, I'm sorry? What I've seen, bees and wasps tend to be among the least picky of the pollinators regarding flower structure. Okay, and you'll get more of an idea about that as we go through these next couple slides and we start talking about some of the pollinators that are actually quite picky. So bees and wasps tend to be less picky regarding how the flowers are built. Generally, if the flower is relatively open, that makes the bees and wasps happy. Now, the research that I found indicated that Your typical bee needs to visit at least 100 flowers per day to meet the needs of the hive, or meet their individual needs, as the case may be. Bees and wasps also tend to use what we call a visual search image. In other words, they tend to be kind of, what's the word? Kind of have blinders on. Once they get a picture in their mind of what they want, then they sort of ignore everything else that's around them, and they just go for that one thing. Butterflies tend to be that way as well. Now, just a real quick word on these guys, because not that long ago, that was one of the huge scares of 2020, was the giant Asian hornets, or killer wasps, or killer hornets, however you want to call them. And on Facebook, I mean, everybody and their brother was panicking over these guys. Well, first off, as far as I know, they've only been found in Washington, Washington State. And as far as I know, I think there was a hive that was found, a nest that was found, I want to say in like January in Washington. I have not heard any reports of any other nests being found since. So, when everybody was screaming, the sky is falling, the sky is falling, it was extremely preemptive. Okay, there's no actual evidence at this point that we need to be stressing out about these guys. Now, as far as butterflies and moths go, they're more picky about the structure of the flowers that they use. They need flowers that are tubular shape and are clustered into a landing pad. And for some folks, for example, if you look at this thistle down here, some folks may have trouble visualizing how those are tubular flowers. Or for example, dandelions. Okay, believe it or not, dandelions are a tubular flower. How you can verify that, after our talk here, run out in the yard, pull up a dandelion, hopefully you have some in your yard, and tear the flower head apart. And what you'll find is, you've got that yellow strap-shaped part of the flower, but at the base of it, there's actually a long tube. And the butterflies, they know that, okay? And so that's what they're going for, is that tube underneath that yellow strap. Because of course, their reward is in that tube in the form of nectar. So what I tell folks, they can have the biggest, bestest rose garden in the county, and I can pretty much guarantee them they will not have butterfly one, just because roses aren't built right to attract butterflies. Whereas thistle, on the other hand, is built perfectly to attract butterflies. Now, the research I found, and personally I think it's wrong, is that butterflies and moths have to visit at least 25 flowers per day to meet their nutritional needs. I personally think it's more than that. And the data that was available that I could find was extremely limited. Now, butterflies also use that visual search image. So once again, once that butterfly gets a picture of this thistle in his mind, that's what he's looking for, is thistle, okay? And he might fly past, the bestest, most wonderful sunflower patch in the world, because what he's looking for is thistle, okay? That's just how they operate. And so when you're designing your home landscaping, if you're, like we did, if you are converting old fields into prairies and that sort of thing, you have to let that knowledge kind of guide how you plant things. And I'll get to that here shortly. Other pollinators, beetles, okay? Beetles tend to go for flesh-colored flowers near the ground. So what I've got here is a bunch of blister beetles all over a species of Trillium. Likewise, they would be likely to pollinate, for example, wild ginger that grows out in the woods. That would be another one that the beetles would go for. Flies. Flies are another pollinator. Once again, they tend to be going for the flesh-colored flowers, either on the ground or higher up. The picture that you're looking at right now, that's the flower for the pawpaw tree, and they are known to be fly pollinated. Flies are also attracted by foul odors. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with the wildflower known as skunk cabbage, and I don't have a picture of it for you to look at, but skunk cabbage is completely designed to use flies as their pollinator. Okay, they come up early spring, and what happens basically as soon as that flower and the flower stays fairly close to the ground, it's flesh colored, you know, kind of like our pawpaw flower here. The inside where all the pollen is produced is roughly this same color here, maybe a little bit more yellow. And that skunk cabbage flower, once it comes up and opens up, decomposition immediately starts. And so it's producing the foul odor, okay, which of course is going to attract the flies. Another creature that's actually attracted into those skunk cabbage, believe it or not, are mice. Because as those flowers start to decompose, start to stink, they're also generating heat. So if it's a cold day in early spring, that mouse might actually crawl inside that flower to warm up a little bit. Okay, and then of course he rubs his fur on the anthers inside the flower there, and then eventually that fur rubs up against the pistil, the female part, and that little mouse has now accomplished pollination. So, you know, it's kind of wild how some of this stuff works out sometimes. Hummingbirds. Hummingbirds tend to prefer long tubular flowers. As many of us know, they tend to be attracted to red, but they will go to other colors as well. So for example, over here, this is a hummingbird that is visiting one of the flower heads on a century plant. I took this picture in Arizona. And so the flowers don't necessarily have to be red, okay? That long tubular structure is kind of the key feature. And then something that does not happen so much here in the East, out West, this is especially noteworthy, and that is bats. Okay, this is a saguaro cactus here, you know, the cactus that you see in the old time Westerns with the arms sticking out of it. The flowers tend to congregate towards the top of the plant and towards the top of those arms. As you see, it's very long and tubular, very open at the end, and they're in fact pollinated by bats. Now, I'm not aware of anything that we have here in Ohio that would qualify as bat pollinated. I can't think of anything off the top, but once again, if you go out to Arizona, bat pollination is a legitimate thing. So as far as helping pollinators, because once again, I mean, that's here at Butterfly Ridge, that's one of the key things that we are preaching to people frequently. And, you know, and I realize that's you folks' interest as well. You don't want your bees to starve, okay? So for butterflies, once again, specifically, you have to have the tubular flowers clustered into a landing pad. So this particular plant here, this is called colic root. And if you know blazing star, then this is actually a very close relative to blazing star. You can see we got these long tubular flowers here, okay? And you got a bunch of them all right together, so it's easy for butterflies to land on. Some other plants that qualify in that same category as well. Joe Pye weed. That's one, in my experience, people are reluctant to plant it in their home landscapes just because it gets so big. I mean, Joe Pye can get, 6-8 feet tall, but as you see, a tremendous pollinator plant. Once again, if you could tear those flowers apart, you would see that they have that tubular shape, and obviously the butterflies know it. I did not place those butterflies there. That's how I found them. Okay, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 tiger swallowtails on there. But if you're trying to, kind of like what we do, if you're trying to refurbish more of a native type habitat, Joe Pye is an awesome choice. I'll be honest though, here at Butterfly Ridge, we cannot grow Joe Pye, and that's because we have deer. And we have tried planting Joe Pye, and the Joe Pye gets about 1 foot tall and the deer eat it. And it may try to come back 1 year and they eat it again, and then that's the end of our Joe Pye. Okay, so if y'all wanna, any of you want a free deer, come to Butterfly Ridge, you get a free deer with your paid admission. So ironweed, this is another one. Once again, it's got the tubular flowers. It's another one that gets very tall for us a lot because deer don't mess with it. So we try to take full advantage of that. I'm sure several of you are probably familiar with purple coneflower. And once again, if you tear all of that apart, you'll find those flowers are tubular shape. Now, one thing I would like to point out just real quick is these 3 right here, the ones that we've discussed, the Joe Pye, the ironweed, and the coneflower, they're all in the sunflower family. And I'll be referring back to that here fairly shortly. Over here on the far right, that's wild bergamot, and it's a mint. Once again, and hopefully that one's fairly easy to see, once again, that tubular shape. We've planted a lot of bergamot at our place for a couple reasons. Number one, it's a total butterfly magnet. And number 2, it is so easy to grow from seed, you almost feel like you're cheating. Even people with black thumbs can grow bergamot from seed. Money back guarantee. I'm not sure what you were charged to attend our meeting tonight, but I'll refund your money if you try to grow. It doesn't work. How about that? Now, I'll be honest, this is one of my favorite pictures that I've taken. This is purple milkweed. Once again, you can see that tubular shape on the milkweed flowers. The reason I like this picture so much is that because there's so many different pollinator groups in this picture. So we've got the butterflies up here, we've got a bee here, a beetle down here, and a moth here. So everybody likes milkweed, okay? And I think right there that's the picture that I use to sell people on milkweed, okay? Because everybody likes milkweed. And we'll be talking about a little bit more about milkweed here before too long. Now for hummingbirds, in our area, I think these are probably among the 3 top hummingbird plants. We've got trumpet creeper over here, trumpet honeysuckle. This is a native honeysuckle. It's a booger to find in the nursery trade. We had to drive all the way to Dayton to get some of this, but I'm very happy we did, because once again, I mean, it's a hummingbird magnet. And then the cardinal flower, once again, piece of cake to grow from seed. The only downside, it is a native perennial, but it seems to be relatively short-lived. Most of our cardinal flower, we get maybe 3 seasons out of it, and that's about it. But once again, it's so easy to grow that, it's easy to replace them when they poop out. Now, there is an importance to how you plant things, okay? And let me offer you a scenario here. Let's say that you go to the garden center and you buy 5 milkweed plants, okay? And then you go out to your yard and you put one up here in this corner and one in this corner and one down in this corner and one over in this corner and then one in the middle, okay? That really is not very beneficial as far as how you plant them. Because once again, remember, butterflies, bees, okay, they seek out food based on a visual search image. So once they decide they're looking for orange flowered butterfly weed today, they ignore other stuff and they're just looking at butterfly weed. So with that in mind, you have to kind of plant knowing that, okay? So it's actually much more helpful, instead of putting your milkweed in the corners of your yard and maybe one in the middle, it's actually much more helpful if you plant all 5 of them together wherever in your yard, but it's much more helpful if you plant them all together. Because what will happen is your bees, your butterflies, they will spend less energy flying from plant to plant when you lump everything together than if you spread it all out, okay? Something else to keep in mind, and for example, aster and goldenrod are for the most part really good bee plants or good butterfly plants. Now we've got friends down in Meigs County that then they raise honeybees. They don't like goldenrod because they say it makes their honey taste like spoiled socks or something. But if you plant your landscape full of aster and goldenrod and that's it, then yeah, your yard's going to be the one that everybody's going to be in when September rolls around, and June and July, all those critters are going to be 3 houses down, okay? So you want to make sure that you have food available throughout the season, okay? You know, have some spring blooming stuff there, have summer blooming stuff there, have late summer blooming stuff. If you want all these critters hanging out in your yard instead of the neighbor down the street. And then one thing that I tend to be very obsessive about is this last item, planting the wild form of natives. There's a trendy thing going around right now, and it's what are called nativars, where researchers have taken native plants and tinkered with them, okay? And to give you an idea, I used to work at Franklin Park Conservatory up in Columbus, and they had an area, and oh geez, what was the area called now? The test plots, something like that, where local growers, you know, would genetically tinker with different plants, you know, petunias or purple coneflowers or whatever. And then they would try them out in these test plots that we had at Franklin Park Conservatory to see how they handled drought or how they handled cold or, you know, different forms of stress. And lots of times, like when I was on my break or at lunchtime or something, I would go hang out in the test plots just to see what plants the butterflies were hanging out on. So for example, with the purple coneflowers, we had like 4 different kinds of purple coneflowers. You know, we had just the regular run-of-the-mill coneflowers. We had some with what people would think of as like double petals, okay? We had some that, those disc flowers on the inside, instead of making like a little mound, they made like this great big huge tube looking thing. And then we had some purple coneflowers that were green, okay? And what the pollinators were gravitating to was just the regular old boring purple coneflowers. And there's actually a reason why, okay? And that reason is when you genetically tinker with stuff to get petals that are different colors or to get multiple petals, you know, double petals, triple petals, whatever. When those plants are genetically tinkered with, something frequently is tinkered out. And once again, it's not an intentional thing. It's just how it tends to work. And the thing that gets tinkered out is nectar production. More often than not, what gets tinkered out is nectar production. So that's why I strongly recommend that you just go for the plain old boring wild type of the plant. So I actually, this is a page I stole from a local nursery. They offer two different kinds of purple coneflower. They offer the Echinacea purpurea Rubenstern, the ruby star purple coneflower. And then down here is just the regular old boring purple coneflower, okay? If I had the $20 burning a hole in my pocket and I want purple coneflower, this is the one that I would get, just the regular old boring one, because you're taking a risk getting these nativars, getting these cultivars. You're taking a risk that nectar production has been tinkered out of them. So if you go to the garden center, and here's one with a tag that says purple coneflower, Joe Blow's Ruby Burgundy Jubilee BR 9937625, ignore it, okay? Go for the one that's just got purple coneflower on the tag. Now, this is where I normally tell people if your person next to you is asleep, go ahead and hit them with your elbow to wake them up. In the Zoom format, that's a little bit more challenging, but I don't know if Jeannie can like buzz different people using Zoom, you know, to see if they're awake or not. But these are different plant families that you pretty much cannot go wrong. Okay, once again, this is a part of the whole money back guarantee type thing. Okay, these are the three plant families that we've kind of, our motto here at Butterfly Ridge is if you plant it, they will come. And with these three families, the milkweed family, the mint family, and the sunflower family, once again, I'm a very firm believer, if you plant them, they will come. So with them, and you know what, actually, well, let me give you a sec if you want to jot some of those down, because then I'm going to show you some pictures of some of those as well. You'll notice in that mint family column, there's a lot of things there that are not native. Okay, I recognize that some people like the herb garden. Okay, and there's a lot of things here that you would find in people's herb gardens. Okay, thyme, rosemary, peppermint, catnip, you know, lavender. Okay, once again, all super good nectar sources for pollinators. But pretty much all the rest of these have native roots. Once again, here at Butterfly Ridge, we're pretty obsessed with the natives. You won't find very many cultivated things, horticultural things here at our place. So if we look at the milkweed family, over here we have poke milkweed. It's a milkweed that a lot of folks are not familiar with. And we got a couple pollinators here paying visit. Poke milkweed. We are big fans of poke milkweed. We have gone out of our way to collect seed nearby of this plant. This is one of the milkweeds that will tolerate shade. Most milkweeds, the more sun you can give them, the happier they are. The poke is, once again, it loves the shade. Now, in my experience, the butterflies aren't real crazy with the poke milkweed, but bees absolutely are. So so that's one of the milkweeds. Down here in the bottom, this is butterfly weed. Once again, another strong nectar plant.
No.
Swamp milkweed. If you have a wet spot, okay, swamp milkweed's an excellent choice. By the way, the butterfly weed tends to prefer sunny, dry sites. The common milkweed, that's probably one of the more flexible of the milkweeds. And, you know, they'll tolerate a little bit of shade, they'll tolerate wet, they'll tolerate dry, very flexible. And then another milkweed that frequently folks aren't real familiar with over here on the far right, tall green milkweed, Asclepias hurtella. Once again, in my experience, the butterflies aren't all that crazy about it, but the bees love the stuff. Okay, and by the way, ants love it too for whatever reason. But the bees just absolutely love this tall green milkweed. So that's just a few of the milkweed. There are others as well. For example, here at Butterfly Ridge, we've got 8 different species of milkweeds on our site. Okay, some of the mints that we have planted like mad out in our prairie. So here on the upper left, we've got mountain mint. Once again, it seems like the bees prefer it over the butterflies, which is totally okay. Bottom center, that is the wild bergamot, and that one's a total butterfly magnet. Over on the far right is the downy wood mint. That's an early season mint, blooms like late May, early June. Everybody likes downy wood mint. Bees, butterflies, everybody likes that. To give you an idea how much we like it at Butterfly Ridge, this is a part of that prairie I told you that we took completely back to bare dirt and replanted it. So all this pinkish purple that you see out here, that is all bergamot. All the white that you have here in the foreground, that's all mountain mint. We've got that stuff completely scattered throughout the prairie. And our pollinators love it. Now, members of the sunflower family, and if you'll recall, I already showed you a few of those. The purple coneflower, the ironweed, the Joe Pye weed, that's all in the same sunflower family. Here are a few more examples. We got the blazing star. There's actually multiple different species of blazing star. A little short thing, the mist flower, it only gets like 12 inches tall or so. But once again, the pollinators just totally love the stuff. Aster. You know, I've never actually counted how many different kinds of asters we have here in Ohio, but I mean, it has to be 15 to 20, lots of different kinds of asters. And once again, as far as late season food for your pollinators, you really can't do better than the asters. Over here, if you want kind of a novelty member of the group, rattlesnake master. I like it because it reminds me of out west. The leaves look a lot like yucca. And so I get a kick out of that. Kind of reminds me of when we lived in Arizona. But these are the flower heads here. As you can see, multiple flowers all congregated together for a nice little landing pad. So that's rattlesnake master there. Now, trees, because once again, I just said, you know, a while back how most trees are actually wind pollinated. Okay, well, there are some that are insect pollinated. And I wanted to give you a few examples of those. And when I put this particular slide together, and then I went out to my truck to get something, and I realized I had left redbud out of my picture because I've got redbuds that line my driveway. So realized we could add redbud, okay, to this picture as well. But we've got the black locust over here, and that should be blooming, oh, probably about 3 weeks or so. It all depends what's going to happen with this cold spell. Last year we had a real hard freeze down here. I think it was really early in May. Completely killed all the black locust flower buds. We had no black locust blooming at all last year. We'll see what happens based on tomorrow. So the black locust, excellent choice. I put yellow buckeye, not a, necessarily against Ohio buckeye or anything. Just down here, yellow buckeye is what we've got. Ohio buckeye is more of a northern species. So yellow buckeye, the willows. Willows tend to be excellent for pollinators. Bees like it. There's actually some butterflies that use it as a caterpillar host plant. So willow's a good thing. And the really cool thing about willow, once again, is just so blasted easy to grow. Okay, the willows that we have on our site, I drove 3 or 4 miles down the road where there are some willow growing next to Pine Creek. I took cuttings of it, stuck it in a flat of wet soil while I was, that was sitting in the back of my truck, brought it home, put it in the greenhouse, voila, we now have willow. Okay, it's that easy. Once again, you almost feel like cheating. It's so easy. Shrub that we are really, really high on here, especially if you have a wet area, is buttonbush. And once again, that whole thing I've been talking about flower structure. And hopefully you can see it, how once again, these flowers have kind of a tubular shape. We got a bunch of them on this flower head. I mean, there's probably at least 100 flowers right there. Tubular shape, all bunched together. Bees, butterflies, everybody loves this stuff. Now, the thing is you have to have a wet spot. So we've planted this in our wetland, okay? Now, I'll tell you, when we planted it, we were warned that it would take over our wetland, okay? I have seen it growing like along ponds and lakes and rivers and that kind of stuff. And yeah, it will, I've seen it form great big huge thickets. But I think the difference is with our wetland is that we don't generally have standing water in our wetland. I mean, it might be wet for we might have water in our wetland for 3 or 4 weeks, and then the surface dries up. Now, granted, the water is like 3 or 4 inches below the surface, but we typically do not have standing water in our wetland. And our buttonbush has made no attempt whatsoever to go crazy, okay? We still have the exact same number of button bushes that we planted 5 years ago. So, so we just absolutely love our buttonbush. Now, one thing to keep in mind, because we've been talking a lot about food sources so far. Having a lot of food is great, but if you don't have a home to live in, if your tummy's full but you don't have a roof, you still got a problem. So for butterflies have very specific what we call caterpillar host plants. Okay, I think that's one of the fun things about gardening for butterflies, because it's kind of like you're gardening for 2 totally different creatures. Okay, the adult butterfly, they have a certain set of requirements. The youth butterflies, the caterpillars, they have a completely different set of requirements. So I think it's kind of fun trying to meet that challenge of appeasing everybody. Okay, so with butterflies, you have the caterpillar host plants. And realize the nectar plants and the caterpillar host plants are not always the same plants. One of those exceptions is milkweed. Milkweed is what I call a twofer. Okay, it's good nectar plus it's good for caterpillars, but there's not very many of those. Milkweed is one of the few. So to give you an idea, some good caterpillar host plants for butterflies. So I've got the swamp milkweed pictured over here. and milkweed is the caterpillar plant for the monarch butterfly. And in monarchs, the population is declining significantly, and lots of people want to help the monarchs, and planting milkweed is one of those ways that you can do that. Down here in the bottom left, one of my favorite violets is the long-spurred violet, and the violets are blooming right now, at least down here at our place. The violet is the caterpillar host plant for several different fritillary butterflies. So what I'm saying is you will not find the adult butterfly sucking nectar out of the flower, okay? What you will find, and this is typically at night, you will find the caterpillars feeding on the leaves of the violets. And see, and that's the thing about gardening for butterflies is you have to be willing to let them eat your plants, okay? And I'll be honest with you, and maybe I'm weird. My wife tells me I'm weird, so maybe she's right. I go out in our prairie, I go out into our different habitats, and if I don't see things eating my plants, I'm very disappointed. Because, I mean, that's the whole reason I put that stuff out there, was for them to eat it. So, so I absolutely want to find where they're eating my stuff. Up here, New England aster. The asters are the caterpillar host plants for the pearl crescent butterfly, which is a very tiny little orange butterfly. My hunch is if I showed you a picture, and I apologize, I didn't think to put the picture here. If I showed you a picture of a pearl crescent, you would probably recognize it. They're fairly common. Once again, it's a little orange dude, probably about the size of a, maybe a nickel, in profile. I mean, it's a fairly small little guy. They really love the dandelions. So if you still have dandelions in the next 3 weeks or so, kind of keep an eye on them and you might have pearl crescents showing up. Down here, pawpaw. Pawpaw not only is good for us to eat, but that is also the caterpillar host plant for the zebra swallowtail, black and white striped butterfly. So in a way, that's a twofer. I mean, you get a yummy snack, plus you get butterflies to boot. And then over here, a plant that a lot of folks are not familiar with. It is a native. It tends to do best in wet areas, I'll put it that way, but we have it growing out in our prairie and it's doing fine. And that is American senna. And senna is the caterpillar host plant for several of the sulfur butterflies, the yellow-orange butterflies. They'll use senna as their caterpillar host plant. Some of them also use clover, okay? Or if you have false indigo or bush clover or something like that out in the fields, they'll use those as well. So once again, keep in mind butterflies, they need those plants for the caterpillars. Bees, and once again, we're talking about native bees here. They tend to use abandoned nests, hollow branches. They prefer to stay fairly close to home when they're out finding food. And then hummingbirds, they like to use spiderweb silk, milkweed and thistledown, dead trees for their nesting. One of the reasons I put this slide in, I know folks, they like to have a very neat and tidy landscape, a very neat and tidy garden, okay? Well, realize some of your pollinators, when you're going out of your way, making your garden neat and tidy, you're actually working against many of your pollinators. And that's something probably among the different challenges that we face here at Butterfly Ridge when we talk to people about butterfly gardening and tinkering with your landscape in favor of pollinators. One of the hardest sells that we have is convincing people to let things get messy. So for example, you don't have to cut down dead perennials in the fall, okay? Because somebody's most likely going to be using those. If you have a field here in Ohio, the tradition, and I know because I used to do it, my dad did it, my grandfather did it. The tradition is in the fall, you go out and you mow your field, okay? And it's been very challenging for us to convince people to not do that. Because what's happening, for example, there's tiny, tiny little butterflies called grass skippers. How they overwinter is actually as a caterpillar in those grass stems that are out in your field. They bore into those grass stems, and that's where they spend the winter, is in those grass stems. Well, if you come along in late October and mow off that field, you just chopped up all of next year's grass skippers, okay? If you are obsessive about raking leaves, okay? I mean, to a degree, I can understand raking leaves off of your lawn, okay? I can get that. But like raking leaves out of your flower beds, please don't do that, okay? Because believe it or not, there are moth species who pupate, go from the caterpillar to the pupa, and they do that actually in the soil in your flower beds, just below the leaf layer. So if you go through in the fall, after all the trees have dropped their leaves and you rake up all those leaves, what you've done is you've just exposed those pupa to really cold temperatures in the wintertime. Because once again, they're hanging out just below those leaves. So if you leave the leaves, you're leaving a little blanket with the idea that, that will help them actually get through the winter. So once again, it's good to not be too tidy, okay? The hummingbirds, they want those old spider webs laying around. That's a hard one here at home because my wife is obsessed with spider webs, okay? She doesn't want them hanging around. But if you leave that stuff hanging around, if you leave the milkweeds up, if you leave the thistle up, somebody's going to take advantage of those building materials, if you make them available. A little bit more about bees, because there's different kinds of bees. The yellow jackets over here, I'm not sure if any of us are fans of them. I know that they serve a purpose, okay? I know it's a good purpose that they serve. I'm not a big fan of how they go about doing it, but I know they serve a purpose. But once again, there are other kinds of bees. There's minor bees, there's leaf cutter bees, there's mason, all different kinds of bees. Of all the different bees in the world, very, very few of them are evil like these guys, okay? We like to impose a sense of evil upon all of them, okay, when actually there's only a handful of bee species that should be characterized as evil. Up here is an example of like a bee block where somebody is taken, I don't know if this was old 2x4s or what, but they drilled holes in the 2x4s, and some of those native solitary bees, the females will then go in there, leave their big glop of pollen and food, lay their egg on it, seal up the chamber, do it again, seal up the chamber, do it again, and this is their nest. Okay, this is what they use. And once again, the bees that typically do this are good guys. Okay, they're not going to chase you around the field trying to sting you to death. Okay, that's not the way they roll. And as I mentioned, we had the young lady approach us about her Eagle Scout project. And so this is Isabel here, and she made us several of these bee boxes that we've got scattered throughout the property. She also made us the bee hotel here, or bee condominium. And then Isabel and her dad, they'll be coming out actually this weekend to fill the boxes with, oh, they've got a collection of like hollow reeds, and they've cut blocks out of tree branches and stuff and drilled holes in them, much like that picture I showed you just before here. And that's what they'll fill these boxes with. Once again, trying to help the local native bees. Now, once again, I'm hoping I'm preaching to the choir on this one, but just in case I'm not, I still like to discuss it. We are big believers in avoiding pesticides, okay? And I'll be honest, we're not big fans of Roundup either. So for example, when we completely converted an 1.5 acres of old abused field into prairie, there was not a drop of Roundup that was used in that process. Okay, we are not big fans of Roundup. I believe there's a time and place for it, and killing an 1.5 acres of plants, I don't think is the proper time and place. So here's different ways that you can kill bugs you don't want. Okay, I would argue the alcohol and the soft soap are the better of the options. Now, that's if you've got just a small, you've got white flies on your lantanas or something in your garden bed. Okay, you can use this sort of stuff. Once upon a time, my brother was a huge fan of 7. Okay, I think we've got him cured of that. But if you look at the label here, 7, it kills beetles, which we've just mentioned are pollinators. Okay, it kills what they call worms. But if you look at the picture, that is not an earthworm, that is a caterpillar. Okay, so it kills caterpillars, which of course will become butterflies or moths or sawflies or somebody. And it kills ants. I know a lot of folks aren't big fans of ants, okay, but not only are ants pollinators, they also, there's a group of butterflies called the hair streaks that actually have a mutualistic association with ants. The ants actually farm the hair streak caterpillars. Okay, the ants are up protecting, hanging out with the caterpillars. The caterpillars are doing what they do, they eat food and then they poop. Well, that poop is really sweet. Okay, we call it honeydew. Well, the ants use the caterpillar poop for food because it's so sweet. So the ants are protecting the caterpillars, and in return, the caterpillars poop out this honeydew stuff that feeds the ants. So here at Butterfly Ridge, ants are not bad guys. Okay, ants are good guys as far as we're concerned. Now, if you look, you know how most pesticides on either the front or the back, they'll have this piece of paper that you can pull off. And if you stretch it out, it's about 3 feet long with type, it's like size 2 font. And it tells you everything that wonderful pesticide will do, and it tells you everything that it will kill. So what I did was I got the online version of that 3 feet long piece of paper, and I copied and pasted everything that 7 will kill. Okay, so this is the complete list of everything that 7 will kill. And I like to share with people, I like to show them pictures of exactly what 7 will kill. Okay, and here you go. Realize these are all native butterflies and moths. Okay, they were here before we were. They were here before 7 was invented. Okay, the oakworm complex. Okay, so this is a moth that's about 1.5 inches long or so. We get them here at Butterfly Ridge. Everybody oohs and ahs when they show up at the sheet. I mean, just the coolest looking bug ever. Once again, it's native to Southern Ohio. This is the fiery skipper butterfly. That's actually one of those grass skippers I mentioned, that the caterpillar hangs out in the grass stems over the winter, and hence the reason why you don't want to mow off your field in the fall. We'll flip over here to the catalpa sphinx moth. This one from head to tail is closer to 2 inches long. Once again, it's a showstopper when they show up to the sheet. They are a pollinator. Okay, they do visit flowers. Spiny elm caterpillar. Those of us who are butterfly nerds call these morning cloaks. Okay, once again, native butterfly. And then one of my favorites, Seven calls this green striped maple worm. It's also known as rosy maple moth. Okay, once again, it's a native. Once again, when it shows up on our moth sheets, when we do our moth lighting, everybody oohs and ahs. Okay, so this is the stuff that Seven will kill. Okay, hence the reason why I really try to convince people to not use this stuff, because realize all of these are good guys. Okay, all of them are good guys. So just something to keep in mind. You know, if you really have something you need to kill, like I said, you got white flies on your lantana or aphids on your milkweeds or something like that, there's a much more targeted way to do it than to use a product like stuff. Once again, like I said, we're big fans of ants here. This is an ant hill. Okay, I took this picture down in Adams County. The ants that use it are called the Appalachian mound ants. I'm sorry, Allegheny mound ants. And once again, over here's an example of what they do. This right here is an Appalachian azure caterpillar. Okay, so this will grow up to be a butterfly. This is the ant that is tending it. Okay, and so as this little guy poops out stuff, this guy's going to eat it. Okay, and take it down into the ant nest and use it for food and stuff. He will make sure that spiders or somebody else do not attack the caterpillar. Okay, it's a funky little relationship that they've got. But once again, like I said, here at Butterfly Ridge, we consider ants to be good guys. Okay. Once again, we've got our blister beetles. That's on the list that Seven will kill. Here they are pollinating the trillium. If you would like more resources, kind of winding up here, here's some different resources for you. Something that we have started here at Butterfly Ridge real recently, if you listen to podcasts, we have started what we call the Ridge Notes podcast, where each week we'll discuss a different aspect of pollinators. And so, for example, the episode that we are releasing this coming Saturday morning is actually part 1 of an interview we did with, her name's Gail Morris. She's the coordinator of the Southwest Monarch Study. They service Arizona, New Mexico, Utah, Nevada, Southern California. Gail is really knowledgeable, and she had some insights just as far not only about desert monarchs, but monarchs in general. So I'd like to steer you towards that. As far as plants go, Scioto Gardens Nursery is a good choice. If you want seed, I mean, there's different routes you can go as far as seed is concerned. Roundstone native seed is where we have gotten a lot of our bulk, like prairie grass seed and that sort of thing, was from the folks there at Roundstone. Some different organizations that can help provide just kind of general information to help you help pollinators. And actually, before I flip to the next slide, and I also thought I had this in here, but I guess I don't. Here at Butterfly Ridge, since 2015, we have planted over 5,000 plants at Butterfly Ridge. And all but roughly 50 of those we've grown from seed in our greenhouses. Once again, currently we have one greenhouse, a 12 by 20 hoop house. For a couple years, we were operating 2 of those 12 by 20 hoop houses. But once again, we've grown a lot of things from seed. And for many of those plants, it's a whole lot easier to do than what people think it is. And so, I mean, if you do the math, you know, if you go to Side of Gardens Nursery and they charge you $8 for a 1 gallon native perennial, well, when you think that we've planted 5,000 of those, so whatever 5,000 times 8 is, that's how much money we've saved, okay? We are real big fans of growing stuff from seed. And for those of you who partake of Facebook, we have started a Facebook page. It's called the Ohio Native Plant Seed Exchange. Once again, the Ohio Native Plant Seed Exchange. Exchange is spelled X-C-H-A-N-G-E. Okay, we intentionally left off the first E. But that is a wonderful source if you're wanting to try to do things from seed. We currently have over 2,000 members on that Facebook page, which I find pretty amazing considering we just started like 2 years ago. 2,000 members, all of whom are completely willing to give seeds. We've only got 2 rules on that Facebook page. Number 1, any seed that's traded back and forth has to be to plants that are native to Ohio. And rule number 2 is no money's allowed to change hands. Okay, because we want to try to convince people that you can garden with natives without breaking your checkbook. Because once again, like I said, we've planted 5,000 plants at $8 a head. That's $40,000 we've saved by doing stuff from seed. So once again, the Ohio Native Plant Seed Exchange on Facebook. Couple of books that I've written that are also helpful. Butterfly Gardening with Native Plants. It goes much more detailed into good native plants to use to attract butterflies. Discusses the butterflies that are attracted by certain plants. Even gives you some sample garden bed ideas, some beds that you can create that will attract butterflies. Over here, if you plant one of the things that we do here at Butterfly Ridge is we keep meticulous notes about everything, okay? And so what we did, our first 5 years, okay, we kept track of every habitat we tinkered with, how we tinkered with it, what the result has been. We have done a butterfly transect at the beginning of every month from April through October, starting with April of 2015, okay? And so we can match that butterfly transect data with how we have tinkered with the landscape here. And I can tell you, I can safely say at the minimum, we have quadrupled our butterfly population here in 5 years, okay? Prior to 2020, I probably would have said that we had increased it by probably 5 to 6 times. But then last year was a horrible year for butterflies. So I think it's still safe to say that we have at least quadrupled our butterfly population. And once again, this book tells you all the gory details of how we did it. Both books are available in our gift shop. They're both available on our Butterfly Ridge website, which is right here, butterfly-ridge.com. So, because, and I think I mentioned this earlier, helping out your pollinators, whether they're butterflies, bees, hummingbirds, whoever they may be, it's not rocket science. I mean, it simply is not rocket science. It's just a matter of being deliberate, okay? Doing things intentionally, planting the right stuff, okay? Planting bergamot instead of petunias, you know? So that's the message that we try to get across to folks. You know, it's not hard. It's just a matter of a little bit of research and then paying attention to what you're doing, okay? And so with that, I will thank you. Thank you for letting me talk to your group. And Jeannie, thank you for getting back to me so early this morning so that we knew what was going on here. And
Have you got
now
time
I'll
to take
hush up if folks have
questions?
hush up and folks can ask questions. Absolutely.
Wonderful. Well, if people want to ask questions, don't forget to turn your mic back on, unmute yourself, and the floor is open for anybody that wants to ask. I've got about 1 million, but I'll let other people go first.
Hey, Jeannie, this is Greg.
Yeah,
Oh, I'm sorry.
go ahead.
Go ahead. Okay, I wanted to ask Chris, there's a plant down here, I'm in Jackson, Ohio,
Okay.
that's called dogbane.
Yep.
And the dogbane is, I think, part of the milkweed family or something, but it's very territorial. I mean, it expands out and is trying to take control of my pasture and all. Do the bees or butterflies use that plant at all?
Yes. Now I haven't paid real close attention to how the bees utilize it. I know the butterflies do. I've seen butterflies getting nectar from the flowers. Plus there is, there's a handful of moth species that use the dogbane as a caterpillar host plant. Most of them are in the tiger moth group, which are some really cool looking moths, by the way. Yeah, we've got dogbane here at Butterfly Ridge. Now it's staying pretty well contained just because it's coming up in more kind of like a partial shade type of environment. So it's not getting all wacky and stuff. But yeah, it does have certain redeeming values. It's not just a waste of space.
Good. Teresa, did you have a question?
Okay.
Yes, that was a wonderful presentation. Thank you. My
Thank you.
Wi-Fi went out when you were talking about a plant that you bought at a native nursery in Dayton, and I thought it was a native trumpet creeper. Was that what I heard you talk about?
Yeah, it was a native, some people call it trumpet honeysuckle. It is, the scientific name, if you're into that stuff, is Lonicera sempervirens. Now, unfortunately, the only one that you can really, it's really, really hard to find the basic wild form of that.
Okay.
All of them that I've ever seen at nurseries are what are called the Major Wheeler cultivar.
Okay.
But like I said, we had to go, I mean, Dayton's what, 2.5 hour drive for us. We made a 2.5 hour drive just to get the Major Wheeler, the cultivar version of it.
So you like the Major Wheeler if I'm able to find that locally?
So far it does what we want it to do. We wanted a plant that would be a good nectar source for hummingbirds. And we have absolutely had hummingbirds visiting it.
Eddie, you got a message from Kevin. The OSU 4-miler just opened up and John and him just signed up for it.
Okay, Tim, I think we've got feedback from you.
We tried putting hummingbird feeders up, and we ended up feeding a whole lot more yellow jackets than hummingbirds. And so that's why I drove all the way to Dayton to get this Lonicera sempervirens. because we don't have near the yellow jacket problem now. We don't have to change out the food every so often so it doesn't spoil. I mean, it's a very natural source. And like I said, the hummingbirds seem to like it. I mean, they go to it and they visit it. So,
Okay.
yeah,
Great.
I would suggest using it.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Okay. I have a couple questions. Is the bergamot as invasive as other mints?
Since it's a native, I don't like to use the word invasive with it.
Mhm.
Yeah, it spreads.
It spreads.
It does spread. Now, for us and our purposes, that's
want it
actually
to.
a good thing. You
Right,
know?
right, right.
But once again, the bergamot that we use, I mean, it's a native Ohio
Mhm.
species. I mean, we harvested the seed from some roadside locations throughout southern Ohio. That's actually how we started a lot of our seed, was
Cool.
just driving the roadsides. And when we found something we liked, you know, just pull off and grab some. Unfortunately, we had a certain incident that happened that stopped us from doing that in
Ooh.
the future.
Yeah.
And once again, I mean, we always stayed on the right of way, but no, we were actually held at gunpoint for an hour by
Oh,
a out
My.
of sorts landowner. So
Yikes.
yeah,
Yikes.
we
Yeah, be
don't
careful.
do that as much anymore.
Well, and I looked up Jason England, who's a member of our club, owns Nightcrawler Gardens, and it's on Pleasantville Road in Pleasantville, and he is carrying a lot of natives, I know, at his
Oh, there you
place.
go.
Another
There you
thing I wondered, you had mentioned some things for a wet area. We have a wet spot in our lawn that I would love to
Okay.
remove the grass from and plant some native things for the bees. Is that a
Uh-huh.
good idea or not? My husband's worried that it's just going to be mud.
Oh, no.
So I need to plant things that are really going to take off and fill in. What is that an okay
Right.
idea?
Oh, I absolutely believe it is. I mean, do you have concerns about how big it gets or anything like that?
Well, we could control it with mowing, you know, just
Okay.
mowing around it. But you had said swamp milkweed was a good one, and buttonbush. Are there
We use
others?
swamp milkweed. We use buttonbush. We've planted cardinal flower,
Mhm.
which is a type of lobelia.
Yep.
We have planted swamp aster, cup plant.
Okay.
If you don't mind if it gets tall, cup plant is an amazing plant.
Mhm.
And once again, I mean, how we did it is we just, and actually how we've tinkered with a lot of our sites, because like I said, I'm not a big fan of using Roundup for bed prep type stuff. And we did this in our wetland as well. We went through with the tiller. Well, first off, we used the weed eater pretty hard on the areas that we were wanting to change around. So we hit it with the weed eater, or we hit it with the mower, the deck real low. And then we go through and we tilled it. And we would actually till on a 2 to 3 week schedule for roughly 2 months. Okay, because what will happen the first time that you till it, what you're doing is you're stirring up the seed bank. And so after that first tilling, you're going to have a bunch of weed seeds germinating and popping out. So what we do with each subsequent tilling, what you're doing is you're wiping out that existing seed bank. Okay. And for us, once we got 3 or 4 tillings in, then we go through and we spread seed in the area. Since we had a greenhouse we could use, we also started seed in the greenhouse so that when it was ready, we could also drop plugs in as well. And now one issue that, for example, we had with our wetland, well, we had water flowing through it, okay? And so what we did was we paid attention to where the water channel was going through our wetland, and we got these they're like rolls of hay that you can get.
Mhm.
Like they're like 6 foot long hay rolls basically, or straw rolls. I forget the fancy name for them. But we put those in along that water channel going through our wetland and staked them down so they couldn't move. We knew we couldn't stop the water from moving through,
Right.
but what those straw rolls did for us is it slowed the water down
Mhm.
so that it would not, wash out all the
Wash
stuff
out,
that we had just
yeah.
planted.
Now, you've said that these are easy to grow from seed. Are these a mix of annuals and perennials typically?
We primarily stick with perennials.
Okay, and so do they
Um,
need to be cold, like in the refrigerator or freezer or something for a while to get them to germinate?
Right, and many of our native perennials do require that cold stratification, not all. So for example, I don't think the bergamot requires cold stratification. Most of our native perennials will want 60 days. There's a handful that want fewer days. There's a handful that want more days. So the average is 60 days. So what
And
we do,
Is that
we
in the,
collect our,
okay, go ahead.
we collect our seed in the fall, and we collect a lot of seed in the fall. And then what we do is we get little Ziploc bags, and we'll put maybe half a cup. You can go to Lowe's or whatever and get a bag of like playground sand.
Mhm.
We put like half a cup of playground sand in the Ziploc bag, and then we pour however many seeds we think we're going to want to grow in the spring. We pour those in with the sand, mix it all up. We squirt water in there just enough to make the sand damp. We don't make it soupy or anything like that, just to make it damp. We write on the outside of the Ziploc bag the name of the seed that's in the bag, when we put it in the refrigerator, and when we're supposed to take it out of the refrigerator. And then it lives in the refrigerator for, well, like I said, I mean, a minimum of 60 days. With us, it's usually close between 3 and 4 months. And I know people, it's kind of a running battle I'm actually having on one of the Facebook pages, because people are afraid that it's going to take up way too much room in the refrigerator. Okay. Well, keep in mind, this past winter, we cold stratified, I think, 30 different species, and it took up as much space as a small shoebox. So it doesn't take a huge amount of space. And that way we have a lot more control over what happens to that seed. I know a lot of people like to sow their garden areas in the fall and basically let winterize their seeds.
Right.
But you know what? The way I look at it, if I've had to stare down a homeowner with a gun because I'm standing along the edge of the road collecting a seed, I sure as heck want that seed to become a plant and not mouse poop or something.
Yeah.
So that's why I would prefer to have more control over what the seed does.
Is it too late to do that now and wait 60 days to plant? I mean, I know it's better in the winter.
This is April 20th,
April,
May
be June.
20, June 20.
They're good.
Actually, you could probably get away with that.
Okay.
If you stuck it in the refrigerator soon, I think that you would be safe. Like I said, I'd probably try to get in the fridge within the next week or two.
Right.
If you wait until May, then you're probably kind of pushing the envelope a little bit.
Right. Okay, well, I kind of hogged the questions. Has anybody else got questions? Very interesting. I'm looking back through my notes to see if I have any more.
I have a comment.
Mhm.
With the tilling that you did in 3-week periods, what we did with our pollinator plot is we started in the spring and we planted buckwheat
Oh, uh-huh.
to smother out the grass. And then as soon as it's
Oh,
seed,
okay.
then we mowed it off and planted it again in August. And
Oh, okay.
that keeps you from having to use Roundup.
Oh,
That worked,
Yeah. Yeah.
it worked well.
good.
Good deal. Yeah, what we did, and my dad, he was still alive at the time, and he liked to play on the tractor. He liked to pretend he was a farmer. So what he would do is the area that we wanted to work with to change over to prairie, in the fall, he would hook up the disking implement onto his tractor and he would disc the area, basically cutting up the sod. And then in the spring, once the ground was thawed out, then he would start tilling on this 2 to 3 week basis. The one thing that worked against us, Dad was very adverse to tilling mud, and so if the ground was too wet, he wouldn't till, and I understand why. But one year, I mean, the spring, it was just an amazingly wet spring, so we didn't get in quite as many tillings as we wanted. The result of that was I had to go out and pull up more foxtail grass than what I had to with the other sections. But to be honest, I mean, we've had very, very little weed problems, you know, beyond what you would expect. I mean, down
Right.
here it's multiflora rose, and so we just go through and dig that out. Down here it's Japanese honeysuckle, so when we see it getting a clump of that, we go through and we dig it out. But other than that, we haven't had much in the way of a weed problem in those prairies.
In thinking about trying to do some of these plants in our maybe a smaller plot, you know, we have an acre landscape. When I understand the idea of mass plantings, and how many, I mean, like how many plants do they need really? I mean, that would attract them. What would you suggest? You had talked about putting 5 milkweed plants, you know, in one spot. Is that a good number to go with some of these things?
Right. When we would plant the plugs out in our prairies or in the wetlands or wherever, what we tried to do was put 5 to 7 plants fairly close together.
Okay.
And then we might go down a ways and put another 5 to 7 close together, rather than spreading them all out throughout the area. We would have a 7 plant lump here and a 7 plant lump there.
Yeah. Okay. Great idea. Anybody else? Well, I'm ready to go out and put cardboard down on my grass with some mulch over it and kill a spot.
There you go. Go for it.
Yep. Okay. Anybody else? I guess not. Well, Chris, very interesting. I loved it. Thank you.
Oh,
And,
thank you.
Have to come out and see your place once I can get my back pain figured out and I can do some walking again. But
Yes.
I know people, I just noticed that in the Canal Winchester neighborhood group, people were asking about things to do. So I'll have to remember that. That's another, I'll give you another little hint. When we advertise our B school and stuff, I have gone around and joined all the little neighborhood Facebook groups. Like I belong to like 20 of them. And when they ask if I live in that area, I'll say no, but the president of the bee club and we serve your area and like to be able to post on your, and they let me. And that's a great way to get word out to people of things to do.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
I'd like to invite everybody to come pay us a visit. Like I said, we're open every day but Tuesday until October 15th. So
okay, we've got your address for your for your speaker fee, and we'll get that to you. And we enjoyed it very much. It was great. Anybody else for the good of the cause tonight?
Thank you. It was
Thank
wonderful.
Questions, comments? Okay. Well, thanks a bunch, Chris. Enjoyed
you
it,
bet.
and have to come and see what you got out there. Getting
Yes.
into the agritourism So they,
Hey, last minute question here, Chris.
hey, yeah, Dan.
Well,
How senior friendly is your tour?
well, actually, one of the things that we have, maybe for folks who can't manage that 1 mile walk, or maybe they're afraid by the end of that they get to the 1 mile walk, they'll need an ambulance to pick them up. We've got a 4-seat John Deere Gator that we can give riding tours along the trail. Now,
Just
one
awesome.
problem with that, if you're interested in that riding tour, don't come in the next 3 weeks because the parking brake went out of it. And so right now it's at the Ag Pro store getting fixed, but we're supposed to get it back in like 3 weeks. So.
Okay, you just got me on that one. I'm ready.
Solve that
Right.
problem, Jeannie.
Yep, and for Dan too. We're both the gimpy ones here right
Uh,
now. So cool.
Come
That's
upstairs,
awesome.
Mom.
Yep.
Do whatever you need me to do.
Great. Well, thanks a bunch, and glad everybody came tonight. And looking forward to seeing everybody's face. We're going to try to meet in person in June, so we can actually see each other again. So, but thanks a lot, Chris. It was great, and I'm ready to go out and
What can I do?
find some
Thank
stuff,
you.
find some seeds.
you.
So, thanks
See you
everybody.
soon.
Good night, John Boy and Mary Ellen and all the rest of you.
Good night.